He was signing divorce papers when his past walked through the door. 3 little boys, 5 years of silence, and the only woman who ever made him feel powerless. She didn't come back for his money. She didn't come back for his protection. She came back so her sons could meet their father before it was too late. But in his world, love doesn't just come back. It comes back with consequences. This is not a reunion. This is a reckoning. And you've never seen anything like this on any other channel. Watch what happens when the most dangerous man in the city discovers he's been a father all along. The divorce papers sat on black marble like a death certificate for something that never lived. Jaewon stared at them with the same cold precision he used to dismantle empires. 32 years old, crime lord of the Korean underground in Los Angeles, a man whose name made grown men lower their eyes. And yet here he sat, in a glass tower above a city that feared him, waiting for a woman he'd never loved to sign away a marriage that was only ever a transaction. His wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, was late. Of course she was. She always made him wait. It was the only power she had left. Jaewon's fingers drummed once against the desk. Just once. His second-in-command, Min-soo, stood near the door like a shadow with a pulse. Armed, silent, loyal to the point of death. "She's stalling," Min-soo said quietly. "Let her." Jaewon's voice was low, flat, bored. "It changes nothing." The marriage had been arranged 5 years ago. A merger between families, political, bloodless. She got the title, he got the alliance, neither got love. He didn't believe in love, not anymore. Not since her. Jaewon's jaw tightened at the thought. He didn't let himself think about her often. Thinking led to feeling, and feeling led to weakness. But sometimes, late at night when the city was silent and his empire was secure, her face would flicker behind his eyes like a ghost he couldn't bury. Amara. 28 years old now, if she was still alive. He didn't know. She'd vanished 7 years ago without a word. No note. No explanation. Just an empty apartment and a phone number that no longer existed. He'd searched for her. Quietly. Obsessively. Then he'd stopped. Because men like him didn't chase ghosts. The intercom on his desk buzzed. "Mr. Kang," his assistant's voice came through, hesitant. "There's someone here to see you." Jaewon's eyes narrowed. "I'm in a meeting." "I know, sir, but she says..." A pause. "She says you'll want to see her." "Who is she?" Silence. Then, "She didn't give her name, but she has 3 children with her." Jaewon went still. Min-soo straightened slightly, hand drifting toward his concealed weapon. "Send her away," Jaewon said coldly. "Sir, she said to tell you..." The assistant's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She said to tell you it's about the boys." The world tilted. Just slightly. Just enough. Jaewon stood. Slowly. His heart, a muscle he'd trained to beat without feeling, kicked once against his ribs. "Let her in." The door opened, and his past walked through it. Amara. She looked the same. Different. Older. Stronger. Her skin still rich and warm like midnight sun. Her eyes still impossibly deep. But there was something new in the set of her shoulders. Something that hadn't been there before. Survival. She wore a simple dress. No jewelry. No makeup. Her hair pulled back in a way that said she didn't have time for beauty anymore. She only had time for living. And behind her, 3 little boys. Identical. 5 years old, maybe. Dark-haired. Light brown skin. Eyes like hers. Eyes like his. Jaewon's breath stopped. Min-soo stepped forward instinctively. "Ma'am, you need to..." "It's fine." Jaewon's voice cut through the room like a blade. His eyes never left hers. "Leave us." "Sir, out." Min-soo hesitated, then bowed slightly and exited, closing the door with a quiet click. Silence. The boys stared up at Jaewon with wide, curious eyes. One of them held Amara's hand. Another clutched a small stuffed rabbit. The third just stood there, braver than his brothers, chin lifted slightly. Jaewon saw himself in that stance. Amara. His voice was a whisper. A wound reopened. She met his gaze without flinching. "Hello, Jaewon?" 7 years of silence, and now this. "Who are they?" he asked, but he already knew. Somewhere deep in the part of him that still remembered how to feel, he already knew. Amara's lips pressed together. Then she knelt down, eye level with the boys. "This is your father," she said softly. The world stopped spinning. Jaewon's hands curled into fists at his sides. Not from anger, from the violent, overwhelming need to stay standing. "Say hello," Amara whispered to the boys. The brave one stepped forward first. "Hi." Then the second. "Hi, Dad." The third just stared, wide-eyed and silent. Jaewon couldn't breathe. He was a crime lord. He'd killed men with his bare hands. He'd dismantled empires and rebuilt them in his image. But 3 small voices saying "hi" unmade him completely. Amara stood slowly. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She wouldn't let them. "I didn't come for money," she said quietly. "I didn't come for protection. I came because they deserve to know who their father is." "Why now?" His voice was hoarse, barely his own. "Because I'm running out of time," she said simply. And the way she said it, the weight beneath the words, sent ice through his veins. "What does that mean?" She looked at the boys, then back at him. "It means you need to meet your sons before it's too late." Jaewon had built his empire on control, every decision calculated, every move 3 steps ahead. He didn't react. He anticipated. But this shattered every wall he'd ever built. He stood frozen in his glass tower office, staring at 3 little boys who looked like echoes of himself. His pulse hammered in his ears, a sound he hadn't heard in years. Fear, anger, something bigger than both. Love. Amara stood near the door like she might bolt at any second. Her hands trembled slightly before she clasped them together. She was nervous. Good. She should be. "You disappeared," Jaewon said quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that preceded violence in his world. "You were pregnant, and you disappeared." "I had to." "You had to?" His voice cracked like a whip. The boys flinched. He hated himself for it immediately. Amara's jaw tightened. "You don't get to be angry, Jaewon, not after what you became." "What I became." He took a step forward, then stopped. The brave boy, the one who'd spoken first, moved slightly in front of his brothers, protecting them. From him. Jaewon's chest tightened. "I was always this," he said, voice dropping. "You knew what I was when you loved me." "I knew you were becoming this," Amara corrected. "I didn't know you'd let it consume you completely." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. The boys looked between them like they were watching a language they didn't yet understand. Jaewon exhaled slowly, forced himself to breathe, to think. "How long have you been back in the city?" 3 weeks. 3 weeks! He laughed, sharp, humorless. "You've been here 3 weeks and you're only telling me now?" "I needed to be sure." "Sure of what?" "That you were still human enough to meet them." The words hit like bullets. Jaewon turned away, looked out at the city sprawling below his tower, his kingdom, his cage. "Why are you running out of time?" he asked. Amara was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm sick." The floor dropped out from under him. He turned slowly. "What?" "It's why I came back." Her voice was steady, too steady, rehearsed. "I don't know how much time I have left. Months. Maybe a year. And I couldn't—" Her voice cracked. "Just once. I couldn't let them grow up not knowing you existed." Jaewon stared at her, at the woman who'd once made him believe he could be more than his father's son, more than violence and power and cold-blooded control. "What do you need?" he asked. "Nothing." "Amara, I don't need your money, Jaewon. I don't need your protection. I just need you to know they exist. That's all." "That's all?" His voice rose despite himself. "You walk back into my life with 3 sons I didn't know existed. Tell me you're dying, and expect me to do nothing?" "I expect you to meet them," she said firmly, "to know them, so that when I'm gone, they'll remember they had a father who—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "Who wasn't just a ghost." The boys were watching him now, really watching, studying him the way children do when they're trying to understand if someone is safe. Jaewon had spent his entire adult life making sure people felt unsafe around him. But these three deserved better. He crouched down slowly, got on their level. His knees creaked. His suit pulled tight across his shoulders. "What are your names?" he asked softly. The brave one answered first. "I'm Minho." The second boy, the one with the stuffed rabbit, whispered, "Ji-ho?" The third said nothing, just stared with those impossibly familiar eyes. "And him?" Jaewon asked Amara. Day, she said quietly. He doesn't talk much, but he listens to everything. Jaewon looked at Day, saw himself at that age, silent, observing, learning which adults were dangerous and which were merely loud. Hi, Day, Jaewon said. Day blinked, then, slowly, lifted one small hand in a wave. Something inside Jaewon's chest cracked open. He stood abruptly, turned back to Amara. You'll stay here. What? In the city, close, where I can… He stopped, reorganized his thoughts. Where they're safe. Jaewon, I don't need… You don't get to tell me what you need anymore. His voice was steel. You made that choice 7 years ago when you left. Now I'm making one. You'll stay. They'll be protected. And you'll let me get to know my sons. I'm not asking for protection. I don't care what you're asking for. He stepped closer, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into her face, close enough to smell the faint scent of vanilla that still clung to her skin after all these years. You came here for them, fine, but now I'm deciding what happens next. Amara held his gaze. You can't control this, Jaewon. Watch me. For a moment, neither moved. Then Minho tugged on Amara's dress. Mama, I'm hungry. The tension broke. Amara's expression softened immediately. She knelt down, smoothed his hair. Okay, baby. We'll go soon. No. Jaewon pulled out his phone, typed quickly. You'll eat here. My chef will make whatever they want. Jaewon, please. The word felt foreign in his mouth. He didn't say please. He gave orders. But this was different. She was different. They were different. Amara studied him for a long, quiet moment, then nodded once. Okay. The boys ate like they'd never seen food before. Jaewon watched from across the private dining room attached to his office, his own plate untouched. Minho devoured chicken tenders. Jiho nibbled cautiously on pasta, his stuffed rabbit perched on the chair beside him. Dae ate slowly, methodically, eyes flicking between his food and Jaewon like he was solving a puzzle. Amara sat beside them, quiet. She looked thinner than he remembered. Tired. Like she'd been carrying the world alone for too long, because she had. Jaewon's hands curled into fists beneath the table. Are you a bad guy? The question came from Minho, blunt, innocent, devastating. Amara's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Minho… It's fine, Jaewon said quietly. He leaned forward slightly, met Minho's curious gaze. Why do you ask? Because Mama said you're important, and on TV, important people are either really good or really bad. 5 years old and already cutting through the noise. Jaewon almost smiled. I'm not a bad guy, he said carefully. But I'm not a good guy either. Minho frowned. Then what are you? Jaewon glanced at Amara. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. I'm someone who protects the people he cares about, Jaewon said finally, even if it means doing things other people don't understand. Like a superhero? This time, Jaewon did smile. Small, brief. Something like that. Jiho spoke up suddenly, voice soft. Do you have a cape? No cape. Superheroes have capes. Not all of them, Jaewon said. Some just have. Other ways of keeping people safe. Dae was still silent, still watching. His small fingers drummed once against the table, an echo of Jaewon's own nervous habit. The realization hit him like a physical blow. These were his sons. His. Not just genetically. Not just biologically. They carried pieces of him. Pieces of Amara. They were proof that once, years ago, he'd been capable of creating something other than fear. Can we see where you live? Minho asked suddenly. Amara cut in quickly. Minho, that's not… Yes, Jaewon said. Amara's head snapped toward him. Jaewon. They should see it. He stood slowly, towering over the table. Over all of them. If I'm their father, they should know what that means. They're 5 years old. And they're smart enough to sense when they're being lied to. His eyes locked on hers. Aren't you always saying honesty matters? Amara's jaw clenched. She wanted to argue. He could see it. But she also knew he was right. Fine, she said quietly. But just for a few minutes. Jaewon's penthouse was 10 floors above his office. The boy's eyes went wide the moment the elevator doors opened. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern furniture, expensive art that meant nothing to him. A space designed to impress, not to live in. It felt emptier than ever with them in it. Minho ran to the windows immediately. Whoa! You can see everything. Jiho followed more slowly, clutching his rabbit. Day stayed near Amara, small hand wrapped around hers. Jaewon watched them explore, watched the way Minho pointed out landmarks, watched Jiho press his face against the glass, watched Day take in every detail with those sharp, silent eyes. Amara stood beside him, close, not touching. This is your life now, she said quietly. It was my life before, too. No. She turned to look at him. Before, you had 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in. Something else. Something human. Now you're all the way in. You don't know me anymore, Amara. I know enough. Her voice softened. I know you've built something that eats people alive. I know you've become exactly what your father wanted you to be. My father's dead. And you're still trying to prove something to him. The words hit harder than they should have. Jaewon's father had been a king. A tyrant. A man who'd ruled through fear and died alone in a hospital bed with no one holding his hand. Jaewon had sworn he'd be different. He'd failed. Why did you really come back? He asked. Amara was quiet for a long moment. Then, because they asked about you. He turned sharply. What? Minho especially. He's the curious one. He kept asking why he didn't have a dad like other kids, and Her voice wavered. I couldn't keep lying. Not when I don't know how much time I have left. Jaewon's throat tightened. What's wrong with you? He asked. Medically? It doesn't matter. It does. No, she said firmly. What matters is that they know you. That they remember you as more than just a name or a story. That's all I came here for. That's not enough. It has to be. No. Jaewon stepped closer. Close enough that he could see the faint lines around her eyes. The silver in her hair she hadn't had before. The exhaustion she wore like armor. I'm not letting you walk away again. Not this time. You don't get to decide that. Watch me. They stood there, too close, too familiar, while their sons explored a world neither of them knew how to share. Day turned suddenly, looked at them both, and in his small, quiet voice, asked the only question that mattered. Are you going to fight? Amara's breath caught. Jaewon knelt down slowly until he was eye level with his youngest son. No, he said softly. We're not going to fight. Day studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Serious. Solemn. And Jaewon realized something that terrified him more than any enemy ever had. He would burn his entire empire to the ground if it meant keeping this moment intact. The city looked different through a child's eyes. Jaewon discovered this 3 days after Amara walked back into his life. He'd arranged for them to stay in one of his secured properties, a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood where his men could watch from a distance without being obvious. Amara had protested. Of course she had. But when Minho asked if they could stay somewhere with a backyard, she'd given in. The boys needed space, safety, something that felt like home. Jaewon found himself there every evening. It started as obligation, due diligence, making sure the security was adequate, making sure they had everything they needed. But then Minho would drag him outside to kick a soccer ball. Or Jiho would show him a drawing he'd made. A picture of 4 stick figures that Jaewon kept folded in his jacket pocket like a talisman. Or Dae would simply sit beside him on the couch, not speaking, just existing in the same space. And slowly, painfully, Jaewon began to remember what it felt like to be human. Tonight, he sat at Amara's kitchen table while she made tea. The boys were upstairs, supposedly sleeping. Supposedly. They like you, Amara said quietly, her back to him as she poured hot water into 2 cups. They don't know me. They're trying to. She turned, handed him a cup. Chamomile. She remembered he couldn't sleep without it. That's more than most people get from you. Jaewon wrapped his hands around the warm ceramic. I don't know how to be this. Be what? A father. The word felt foreign in his mouth. Heavy. I wasn't raised by one. I was raised by a monster who happened to share my blood. Amara sat down across from him. The kitchen light cast soft shadows across her face. She looked tired. She always looked tired now. You're not your father, she said. How do you know? Because your father wouldn't be here right now. He wouldn't show up every night to kick a ball with his son or watch cartoons or learn their favorite foods. She paused. He wouldn't care. Caring isn't enough. It's a start. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, one of his security team moved past the window, a shadow among shadows. How long have you known? Jaewon asked suddenly. Known what? That you're sick. Amara's fingers tightened around her cup. 8 months. And you waited until now to tell me. I didn't come here for pity, Jaewon. I'm not offering pity, I'm offering resources, doctors, specialists, whatever you need. I've seen specialists. Then see better ones. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. His voice rose slightly. He forced it back down. You have 3 sons who need their mother. Let me help you. Why? She looked at him directly. Why do you suddenly care? You spent 5 years not looking for me. I spent 2 years looking for you, he corrected quietly. Then I stopped because I thought you'd left because you wanted to. I thought I'd become someone you couldn't love anymore. You had. The words hung between them like smoke. But you came back anyway, Jaewon said. For them, not for you. I know. More silence. Then Amara sighed, set down her cup. There's a treatment. Experimental. Expensive. How expensive? She named a figure that would have bankrupted most families. Jaewon didn't blink. Done. Jaewon, I'm not negotiating this, Amara. If there's a chance, any chance, you take it. And what do you get in return? The question struck him as profoundly sad. As if everything in her life had become a transaction. I get to tell my sons their mother is fighting to stay with them, he said quietly. That's what I get. Amara's eyes glistened. She looked away quickly, brushing at her face. Before either could speak again, small footsteps padded down the stairs. Day appeared in the doorway, clutching a blanket. His hair stuck up at odd angles. His eyes were heavy with interrupted sleep. Can't sleep? Amara asked gently. Day shook his head, walked straight to Jaewon, climbed into his lap without asking. Jaewon froze. The boy was warm, solid, real. He smelled like children's shampoo and something indefinably sweet. Bad dream? Jaewon asked awkwardly. Day nodded against his chest. Want to talk about it? Another head shake. Jaewon looked at Amara helplessly. She smiled, small, sad, and mouthed, just hold him. So he did. He wrapped his arms around his youngest son and held him while the child's breathing gradually slowed, while his small body relaxed, while he fell back asleep against Jaewon's chest like he belonged there. And Jaewon realized with devastating clarity that this was what he'd been missing his entire life. Not power, not control. This. This simple, terrible, beautiful weight of someone trusting you completely. The next morning, Jaewon's phone rang at dawn. Min-soo. His voice was tense. We have a problem. Jaewon stepped out onto the townhouse's back porch, closing the door quietly behind him. Inside, the boys were still sleeping. Amara was making breakfast. Talk, Jaewon said. Someone's been asking questions about you, about a woman with 3 kids. Ice flooded Jaewon's veins. Who? We don't know yet, but it's organized, professional. They're being careful, but not careful enough. Jaewon's mind raced. Victor! Viktor Volkov, Russian, ambitious. The kind of man who saw every weakness as an opportunity. Possibly, Min-soo said. Or it could be someone from inside. Someone who thinks you're distraction, makes you vulnerable. I'm not distracted. With respect, sir, you've left the office early every day this week. Jaewon's jaw clenched. Double security on the townhouse. No visible presence, but I want eyes on every entrance within a 3-block radius. And find out who's asking questions. I want names by tonight. Yes, sir. Jaewon ended the call, stared out at the small backyard where his sons would play later, where they should be safe. But his world didn't allow for safe. His world devoured anything soft and turned it into leverage. The door opened behind him. Amara stepped out, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. You look like you're about to go to war, she said quietly. I'm always at war. Even here? Especially here. He took the coffee she offered. Amara, I need you to listen very carefully. Someone knows about you and the boys. Her face went pale. What? I don't know who yet, but I will. In the meantime, you don't leave this house without security. The boys don't go anywhere without guards. And if I tell you to move, you move immediately. No questions. Jaewon, we can leave. We can disappear again. No. The word came out harder than he intended. You're not running. Not this time. This is my world. and I will handle it. But you need to trust me. Trust you? She laughed, bitter, broken. You just told me someone's hunting us because of you. They're hunting you because of me, which means I'm the only one who can stop them. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she said. This is why I left. You left because you were scared. I get it. But hiding didn't keep you safe. It just kept you isolated. Here, with me, you're protected. Protected by the same violence that's threatening us? Yes. He met her gaze directly. Welcome to my world, Amara. It's ugly, and it's brutal, and it's the only thing standing between our sons and people who would use them to hurt me. She stared at him. Her coffee trembled in her hands. I didn't want this for them, she whispered. Neither did I. But it's what we have. So now we deal with it. Behind them, through the glass door, Minho's laugh rang out. Jiho said something in response. Dae remained silent, but Jaewon imagined him smiling. I'll keep them safe, Jaewon said quietly. I swear on everything I am. They will not be touched. And what about you? Amara asked. Who keeps you safe? The question caught him off guard. No one had asked him that in years. I don't need keeping safe, he said. Everyone needs someone, she replied. Then she turned and went back inside, leaving him alone with his coffee and his empire and the growing certainty that he was about to burn half of it to the ground to protect 3 little boys who called him Dad. By evening, Minsu had answers. They met in Jaewon's downtown office. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of amber and blood. It's Park Ji-hoon, Minsu said. Jaewon's expression didn't change, but his hands curled into fists beneath the desk. Park Ji-hoon, one of his own lieutenants. A man he'd trusted with territory, with revenue, with secrets. You're certain? He's been making calls, testing loyalties, asking about your recent absences. Minsu's face was carefully neutral. He thinks you're weak. That fatherhood has made you soft. And what do the others think? They're waiting to see what you do. Of course they were. In his world, weakness was blood in the water. Every shark circled, waiting to see if the wounded were truly wounded. Bring him to me, Jaewon said quietly. When? Tonight. Minsu nodded once and left. Jaewon sat alone in his office, watching the city darken. He thought about Minho's laughter, Jiho's drawings, Dae's silent trust. He thought about Amara's question, who keeps you safe? No one, because he was the monster in the dark that kept everyone else safe. And tonight, he would remind his empire exactly what that meant. Park Ji-hoon arrived at midnight. He was young, ambitious, smart enough to be dangerous, but not smart enough to see 3 moves ahead. He walked into Jaewon's private meeting room with confidence that evaporated the moment he saw the look on Jaewon's face. Sit, Jaewon said. Ji-hoon sat. Jaewon remained standing. Circled him slowly. How long have you worked for me? 4 years, sir. 4 years. And in that time, have I been fair? Yes, sir. Have I been clear about expectations? Yes, sir. Then explain to me why you thought it was acceptable to question my focus. Ji-hoon went very still. I don't know what you mean. You've been asking questions about where I go, who I see, whether I'm still capable of leading. Sir, I would never... Jaewon's hand slammed down on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Ji-hoon flinched. Don't lie to me, Jaewon said quietly. Too quietly. I have recordings of your calls. I have testimony from 3 separate sources. And I have witnesses who will swear you've been positioning yourself for a move. I was just being cautious, protecting our interests. Our interests? Jaewon leaned down until they were eye to eye. There is no our. There is me. And there is everyone who works for me. And if you can't tell the difference, you're in the wrong business. Ji-hoon's face had gone white. I have children now, Jaewon said softly. 3 sons. Did you know that? Ji-hoon shook his head. They're 5 years old. They like soccer and cartoons and bedtime stories. And when they look at me, they don't see a crime lord. They see their father. Sir, let me finish. Jaewon straightened. You thought fatherhood made me weak. You thought caring about something other than power meant I'd lost my edge. You were wrong. He walked to the window, looked out at the city he owned. Fatherhood hasn't made me weak, he continued. It's made me more dangerous than I've ever been, because now I have something worth protecting. And anyone who threatens that? He turned back to Ji-hoon. I don't just remove them. I erase them. Ji-hoon was trembling now. Here's what's going to happen, Jae-won said. You're going to leave this city, tonight. You're going to take whatever you can carry, and you're going to disappear. If I ever hear your name again, if you ever come near my family or my business, they will never find your body. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Do you understand? Yes. Ji-hoon's voice cracked. I understand. Good. Jae-won nodded to Min-soo, who'd been standing silently near the door. Escort Mr. Park to his car. Make sure he leaves immediately. Min-soo stepped forward. Ji-hoon stood on shaking legs. At the door, Ji-hoon turned back. I'm sorry. No, you're not, Jae-won said. You're just scared. But that's enough. They left. Jae-won stood alone in the silence of his empire. He pulled out his phone. Scrolled to a photo Amara had sent earlier. Minho, Jiho, and Dae making silly faces at the camera. And he smiled. Not the cold smile he used in meetings. A real one. Then he sent a message to his entire network. I'm still here. I'm still watching. And if anyone else wants to test me, they're welcome to try. But know this. I don't protect my empire anymore. I protect my family. And I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt them. He hit send. Let the sharks circle. He'd remind them all why he was king. 3 weeks passed. The message worked. No one moved against him. No one questioned him. The empire held. But something else was shifting. Jae-won felt it every time he left his office early to have dinner with his sons. Every time he chose bedtime stories over business meetings. Every time he looked at Amara and remembered what it felt like to want something more than power. His empire was built on fear, but his family was built on something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Hope. He was sitting in Amara's kitchen again. It had become a ritual when she brought him the news. The treatment is working, she said quietly. Jae-won looked up from the paperwork he'd been reviewing. What? The doctors called today. The experimental treatment. It's working. The tumors are shrinking. The world stopped just for a moment, just long enough for him to remember how to breathe. How much? He asked. 30% reduction in 3 weeks, if it continues. She paused, swallowed hard. They said I might have years, not months, years. Jae-won stood abruptly, crossed the kitchen, stopped just short of touching her. Amara, she was crying, not sobbing, just silent tears streaming down her face. I thought I was dying, she whispered. I thought I'd brought them here just to say goodbye. And now you get to stay, Jae-won said. Now I get to stay. They stood there, too close, not close enough, while upstairs their sons slept peacefully, unaware that their mother had just been given a future. Thank you, Amara said. For what? For the treatment. For protecting us. For... She hesitated. For being here. I'm their father. Where else would I be? Most men in your position wouldn't be here at all. I'm not most men. No, she agreed softly. You're not. Before either could say more, Jae-won's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. What is it? Amara asked. Meeting. Tomorrow night. The council. The council. 5 heads of 5 families. The men who controlled different pieces of the city's underworld. They met rarely, only when something threatened the balance. What do they want? Amara asked. Me. Jae-won put his phone away. They want to discuss my recent changes in priority. Are you in danger? No, but they're going to ask me to choose. Choose what? Between this life and the one I'm building with you and the boys. Amara's face went pale. What will you say? Jae-won looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd walked away because his world was too dark. Who'd come back because their sons deserved to know their father. Who was fighting to live so they wouldn't grow up alone. I don't know yet, he said honestly. The meeting was held in a neutral location. An old restaurant that had been closed to the public for decades, but remained standing as a monument to power. 5 men sat around a circular table. Jae-won made 6. He knew them all. Had worked with most of them. Had killed for some of them. Viktor Volkov sat directly across from him. Russian, gray-haired, eyes like a wolf. You're late, Viktor said. I'm exactly on time, Jae-won replied. You're just early. The man to Viktor's left, Chen Wei, head of the Chinese syndicate, laughed once, short, sharp. Let's begin, said Marcus Stone, the eldest of them, African American, 60-something, a man who'd survived 4 decades in a business that usually killed you in one. We've asked you here because we're concerned. About what? Jaewon asked calmly. About your focus, Victor said bluntly. About whether you're still capable of leading your territory. My territory is stable, revenue is up, conflicts are down. What exactly concerns you? You've been distracted, Chen Wei said. You leave early, you miss meetings, you've become domestic. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Domestic, Jaewon repeated. You mean I have a family? We mean you have a weakness, Victor corrected. And in our world, weakness is fatal. My family is not a weakness. No? Victor leaned forward. Tell me, Jaewon, if someone threatened your woman or your children, would you burn your territory to save them? Yes. The answer came without hesitation. The table went silent. Marcus Stone sighed heavily. That's what we were afraid of. Then you were afraid of the wrong thing, Jaewon said. You should be afraid of what I'll do to anyone who threatens them. We're not threatening them, Chen Wei said carefully. We're questioning whether you can maintain balance, whether your attachment will make you unpredictable. I've always been unpredictable. That's what makes me effective. It also makes you dangerous, Victor said, to yourself and to us. So what are you proposing? Jaewon asked flatly. That I give up my family? That I pretend my sons don't exist? We're proposing you choose, Marcus said quietly. The Empire or them. You can't have both. Why not? Because eventually, Victor said, someone will figure out what we all know. That you care more about 3 children than you do about power. And when that happens, they'll use it against you. Against all of us. Let them try. This isn't a joke, Jaewon. I'm not joking. Jaewon stood, slowly. I spent my entire life building power. Accumulating territory. Becoming exactly what my father wanted me to be. And for what? So I could die alone in a hospital bed with no one holding my hand? Your father died weak, Victor said coldly. My father died alone, Jaewon corrected. There's a difference. He had all the power in the world, and in the end, it meant nothing. No one mourned him. No one missed him. He was just gone. And you think your sons will be different? Chen Wei asked. I know they will. Jaewon looked around the table. I have 3 boys who run to me when I walk through the door, who draw me pictures, who trust me to keep them safe. That's not weakness. That's the only thing in my life that's ever felt like strength. Poetic, Victor said, but irrelevant. Then consider this relevant. I'm not giving them up. I'm not choosing. I'm keeping both. That's not possible, Marcus said. Watch me. Jaewon turned toward the door. If you walk out of here, Victor called after him, you walk out alone. No support. No alliance. You'll be isolated. Jaewon paused, looked back over his shoulder. Good, he said. Isolation means no one can use you against me. And he left. He drove straight to the townhouse. It was past midnight. The lights were off, but he used his key and let himself in quietly. The house smelled like home. Like children's shampoo and Amara's tea and something indefinably safe. He found her in the living room, reading on the couch. She looked up when he entered. How did it go? I made a choice. She set down her book. And I chose you. All of you. Amara's breath caught. Jaewon, they wanted me to pick between my empire and my family. I told them I'd keep both. They didn't like that answer. What does that mean? It means I'm on my own now. No alliances, no support from the council. Just me and the men loyal to me. That's suicide. Maybe. He sat down beside her. Close. Or maybe it's the first smart thing I've done in years. You're going to lose everything. No. He looked at her directly. I'm going to lose some things. Territory, influence, power. But I'll keep what matters. My sons. Their mother. A life that isn't just violence and control. You can't just walk away from that world. I'm not walking away. I'm restructuring. Downsizing. Becoming smaller, tighter, stronger. I'll keep enough to stay safe and dangerous. But I'll lose the parts that required me to sacrifice everything else. Amara was quiet for a long time. Then, why? Because Minho asked me yesterday if I'd come to his first soccer game when he's old enough to play. And I realized I want to be there. Not because I have to, because I want to. And I can't do that if I'm running an empire that requires me to be everywhere except where I actually want to be. Tears slid down Amara's face. You're serious? Completely. You're going to give up everything you've built. I'm going to trade one empire for another. He reached out, slowly, carefully, and brushed a tear from her cheek. I spent years building power. Now I want to build something better. What if it's not enough? Then I'll adapt. But I'm not going back, Amara. I can't. Not after knowing what it feels like to be someone's father, someone's... He stopped. Someone worth coming home to. She kissed him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't discussed. She just leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, and it was like coming home after being lost for years. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. I never stopped, Amara whispered. Stopped what? Loving you. Jaewon closed his eyes. You should have. I know, but I didn't. He pulled her close, held her, let himself feel the weight of her against his chest. I'm going to do better, he said quietly. For them, for you, for me. I'm going to be better than what I was. You already are, she said. And for the first time in his life, Jaewon believed it might be true. 6 months later, the city looked the same from the outside. But everything had changed. Jaewon had downsized his operation to a quarter of its original size. He'd sold off territories, released men from his service, shut down operations that required constant violence. Some called it retreat. He called it evolution. He kept only what was necessary: security, legitimate businesses with gray area revenue streams, and a tight core of loyal men who understood what he was building. Not an empire of fear, an empire of survival. The council had watched with interest, waiting for him to fail, waiting for someone to exploit his weakness. No one did. Because Jaewon had done something unexpected. He'd become smaller and therefore harder to hit. Less territory meant fewer enemies. Less visibility meant fewer threats. Less power meant less attention. He'd made himself a ghost in plain sight, and his family was thriving. Minho was enrolled in soccer. Jiho had started art classes. Dae was slowly coming out of his shell, speaking more, smiling more. Amara's treatment was working. The cancer was in remission. She'd gained weight. Color had returned to her face. She was alive in a way she hadn't been when she first walked back into his life. And Jaewon? Jaewon was learning what it meant to be present. Not just physically, but emotionally. He attended soccer games. He helped with homework. He learned to cook simple meals because the boys liked eating dinner together. He was still dangerous, still ruthless when necessary, but he was also a father. And that made all the difference. Tonight was special. It was Minho's 6th birthday, and they were celebrating at the townhouse. Now officially theirs, paperwork signed, security permanent, but subtle. The backyard was decorated with streamers. A small group of boys from Minho's soccer team ran around like controlled chaos. Parents chatted near the grill where Jaewon was somehow managing to cook burgers without burning them. You look domestic, Min-soo said quietly, appearing at his elbow. Jaewon glanced at his second-in-command. Friend, if he was being honest. Is that an insult? An observation. Min-soo smiled, rare for him. You're happy. I'm functional. You're happy, Min-soo repeated. I've known you 15 years. I've never seen you like this. Jaewon flipped a burger. Like what? Relaxed. The word was strange, foreign, but not inaccurate. It's the burgers, Jaewon said dryly. Very meditative. Min-soo laughed, actual laughter. How's the business? Stable, profitable, quiet. Quiet is good. Quiet is different. Jaewon paused. But yes, it's good. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching children run and parents laugh and life happen in ways that felt impossibly normal. Victor's been asking about you, Min-soo said eventually. Let him ask. He thinks you're planning something. I'm planning a 6-year-old's birthday party. If that threatens him, he has bigger problems than me. He doesn't trust the change. He doesn't have to. Jaewon met Min-soo's eyes. I don't answer to the council anymore. I answer to 3 boys who need their father alive and present. Everyone else can adjust. And if they don't? Then they'll learn what happens when you threaten what I care about. His voice dropped. I'm smaller now, but I'm not softer. Make sure everyone remembers that. Minsu nodded once. Yes, sir. He melted back into the background, professional, invisible, while Jae-won returned his attention to the grill. Amara appeared beside him carrying a bowl of salad. She looked beautiful, healthy, alive. The burgers smell amazing, she said. Don't sound so surprised. I'm surprised you haven't set anything on fire. The day's not over. She laughed. The sound still caught him off guard, still made something in his chest tighten. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For this. For all of it. For choosing us. I didn't choose you over something else, Amara. I chose you and something else. A better version of what I was. Still. She leaned against him briefly. Just a moment of contact. Thank you. Before he could respond, Minho ran up, face flushed with excitement. Dad! Dad! Can we do the piñata now? Dad! The word still hit him like a bullet every time. After we eat, Jae-won said. Go tell your brothers to wash their hands. Okay, Minho sprinted off. Jae-won watched him go. Then Jiho appeared, tugging on Jae-won's sleeve. Papa, I made you something. He held up a drawing. Jae-won crouched down to see it properly. It was their family. Stick figures like always, but this time there were 4 of them. Amara, Minho, Jiho, Dae, and one larger figure standing behind them, protecting them. That's you, Jiho explained, pointing at the large figure. You keep us safe. Jae-won's throat tightened. I do my best. You're the best dad ever, Jiho said seriously. Then he hugged Jae-won quickly and ran off to join his brothers. Jae-won stood slowly, the drawing clutched carefully in his hand. Amara was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite name. What? He asked. Nothing. She smiled. Just, you really are happy. Is that so hard to believe? For the man I met 7 years ago? Yes. For the man standing in front of me now? She paused. No, not at all. Later, after the party wound down and the guests left and the boys were bathed and tucked into bed, Jae-won found himself standing in their shared bedroom. Their bedroom. Amara had moved in 3 months ago. Not officially. It had just happened. Gradually, naturally. Until one day he'd realized her clothes were in his closet and her books were on his nightstand and she'd become a permanent, essential part of his life. She emerged from the bathroom in pajamas, hair down, face clean of makeup. She looked 28 again, young, unburdened. They're all asleep, she said. Even Minho, which is a miracle. Sugar crash. Probably. She climbed into bed beside him. Today was good. It was. Minho had fun. He did. They lay in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Amara said, I talked to my doctor yesterday. Jae-won turned his head to look at her. And? Complete remission. The tumors are gone. All of them. His heart stopped. Then restarted. Harder. Gone? Gone. Her eyes glistened. I'm not dying, Jae-won. I'm going to get to watch them grow up. He pulled her into his arms before he could think, held her tight, felt her shake with silent tears against his chest. You're going to live, he said into her hair. I'm going to live. They held each other while the house settled into nighttime silence around them. Marry me, Jae-won said suddenly. Amara pulled back to look at him. What? Marry me, officially, legally. Let me make this permanent. Jae-won, I know I'm still dangerous. I know I'm still part of a world that's dark and violent. But I'm also their father. And I want to be your husband. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Amara was crying again. You really mean that? I've never meant anything more in my life. What about your empire? I have my empire. It's right here. You, them, this house, this life. That's the only empire I need anymore. She kissed him, deep and long and full of 7 years of missing each other. When they finally broke apart, she was smiling through tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Jae-won kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips again. I love you, he said. The words felt new, unfamiliar, but true, utterly true. I love you too, Amara replied. I never stopped. I know. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, while 3 little boys slept peacefully down the hall, safe and loved and unaware that their father had just promised to build them a world worth living in. Epilogue. 1 year later. The wedding was small, Just family, close friends. Min-soo stood as best man, looking uncomfortable in a suit. Minho, Jiho, and Dae served as ring bearers, all three of them, because Jae-won refused to choose. Amara wore white, simple, elegant, beautiful. And when Jae-won saw her walking toward him, he remembered why he'd burned half his empire to the ground. She was worth it. They were all worth it. The vows were short, traditional. But when Jae-won slipped the ring onto her finger, he added quietly, "I promise to be the man you see when you look at me. Not the man I was. The man I'm becoming." "You already are," Amara whispered back. They kissed while their sons cheered. Later, at the small reception in the townhouse backyard, Viktor Volkov appeared. Uninvited. Jae-won spotted him immediately, excused himself from conversation, met Viktor near the back fence, away from guests. "I didn't invite you," Jae-won said flatly. "I came anyway." Viktor studied him. "You look content?" "I am. It suits you, disturbingly." "What do you want, Viktor?" The older man was quiet for a moment. Then, "To admit I was wrong." Jae-won raised an eyebrow. "You chose family over empire," Viktor continued. "We thought it would destroy you. Instead, you've become something we didn't anticipate." "What's that?" "Untouchable. Not because you're powerful, because you're purposeful. You know exactly what you're protecting, and you do it efficiently. No excess, no ego, just precision. Is this a compliment or a threat?" "A recognition." Viktor extended his hand. "You've earned your peace, Jae-won. Keep it. The council won't interfere." Jae-won stared at the offered hand, then shook it once, firm, final. "Good," he said. Viktor nodded and left. Jae-won returned to his family. Minho was chasing Jiho around with cake frosting. Dae sat quietly near Amara, watching everything with those sharp, observant eyes. Amara looked up when Jae-won approached. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," he said honestly. She smiled. "Come dance with your wife." Wife. The word felt right. He took her hand and pulled her into an impromptu dance while their sons laughed and their friends cheered and the sun set over a city that no longer owned, because he'd found something more valuable than power. He'd found home. And he'd fight to keep it for the rest of his life. The end.